So let's get into the games right away. There was quite a few good ones. An international game, which we kind of broke down Saturday before it happened. So let's start there with the Bucs and the Seahawks. Braden, I kind of posed this question to you on Sunday morning. Are the Bucs back?
I think they are, and no discredit to the Seahawks. I think they're a solid team still, but the Bucs are definitely back, and the way they performed in Germany, I'm sorry, was amazing to see.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers really had their way with the run game. Seahawks couldn't really stop it very well. Then you got those weird plays where they try to put Tom Brady as a wide receiver. Like, okay, let's try to have our ancient quarterback run a go route, but their offense, they looked okay. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they didn't look like anything special, but their defense is playing together really well. I thought they did a really good job defending the Seahawks, and it just seems like the Seahawks couldn't get as much going. I mean, they, as the game went along, they did a little bit better, but I think that time difference, it was basically 6 a.m. back in Seattle when this game was played.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a major issue that came into play. But regardless, the game, you got to play the game that's in front of you. So good job by the Buccaneers going out there and getting the win. And I mean, now at least the leader of the AFC South has a 500 record. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have any division leaders with a losing record, so that's good for the game, in my opinion.
I was starting to get a little worried about the Bucs. You guys said they'll be just fine, and I think they're back.
Yeah. Besides the Bucs, what did you guys think about the Seahawks? I did not think Geno played that bad. Um, Overall, I think it was the defense, kind of their bread and butter, um, fell apart when they were playing Tom Brady and the Buccaneers offense. What did you guys think about them?
I didn't think they were too bad. I mean, these are two division leaders going at it, so one of them has to win. And I don't I don't want to call the Seahawks fraudulent. I think they're still a dangerous team, but it definitely shows that they're not like the elite yet. So I think there's still a separation between where the Seahawks are at and like the Vikings and the Eagles. I think Tampa Bay is still in a second tier. So, but it's interesting to see these two teams go at it, and I'm glad that Tampa Bay got the win because let's just be honest. I mean, the game is a lot better when you have winning teams that are actually leading the division.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say. I think can't really say too much bad. They just ended up losing. But
Right.
do you think they'll keep the division lead?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Seattle can hold on to it. I mean,
I think,
San Francisco, they might be coming for him eventually, but San Francisco doesn't have the easiest schedule in the world. I think that Seattle will probably at least win the division, and we might see San Francisco as a wild card team if they're lucky. Potentially the game of the year. I think everybody has to acknowledge it as that. The Vikings and the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. This game got out of hand, and through 3.5 quarters, it looked like the Bills were just going to stomp over the Vikings. Same old Kirk Cousins, same old Vikings. But all of a sudden, Dalvin Cook breaks off an 81-yard touchdown run, and it's a brand new game. And credit to the Vikings. I mean, they didn't really allow Buffalo to score in the second half. They played a very, very solid brand of bend really, really far until the point where you're almost going to break, but they never broke at the end. So credit to them. I mean, that Josh Allen fumble was very weird. That's like a 1 in a million play, but that's what happens. I mean, you gotta take what's in front of you, and the Vikings definitely did that. And Justin Jefferson and Stephon Diggs, that matchup we talked about on Saturday before the game happened, and that matchup definitely didn't disappoint.
The Bills had some injuries in their secondary, but the refs handed this game to them at least 5 times and they couldn't hold on to it. and people are still giving the Bills credit. The Vikings deserve every single piece of the credit here. They won this football game, and this was a great game to watch.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that that was the game of the year so far. One big question I have for you guys, going back to 2018, Chiefs and Rams, could you top this game over that?
I think so, just because of the amount of improbable things that happen. I mean, I was watching it obviously as a Vikings fan, and I see Stephon Diggs make that insane catch on third down, and I'm like, God, just get off the field. But then Josh Allen turns around, throws a pick. Patrick Peterson had an amazing game. This looked like, the Bills were still going to find a way to pull it out. But then the Vikings, they kept on fighting back and never really were knocked down. So that was really impressive. I mean, I can't really think of another game that I've seen that could possibly top this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one seemed to be a lot of back and forth action. Back when they in 2018, that one game with the Rams and the Chiefs, it was kind of just a high firepower scoring offensive type of game. But yeah, this game definitely was a very good football game.
Yeah, I think this one gets topped by it. This game was insane. So was that one. I would have definitely been the best game I've seen to date, and I think this one just tops it.
Well, okay, so that one game back in 2018, was a primetime game. Now, if the setting between the Vikings and the Bills were in a primetime game, could you see the outcome being different?
Hard for me to say, because this kind of was a primetime game in a way. I mean, like 85% of the country saw this game.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you didn't see it is if you were either watching CBS or your team happened to be playing on Fox at the same time. I mean, they show like the distribution map of where the game would be shown, and basically it was all around the entire country. So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the time of day would have been a factor, but other than that, I mean, it was showcased for a large audience. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's a part of the reason why it's viewed as the game of the year already, is because, so many people got to see it.
Right.
I mean, it kind of turned into a primetime game with how long it went.
That's true.
Yep. I fully agree with you about you guys, but do you think the outcome would have been different if it was a 7:20 Sunday night football game?
I think so, just because of the elements.
Okay.
I think the weather would have. I don't live in Buffalo, New York. I have no idea what the weather was like after that, but I assume it would probably have gotten a little bit more cold, and wind probably would have picked up, and it was snowing and raining on and off throughout the game. So hard to say what the weather would have been like, but I think that would have been the main factor afterwards. So that's my thoughts on the situation.
Okay.
Brayden, you had asked me Saturday night if I saw a world where the Vikings could win with Josh Allen starting at quarterback. I said if Josh Allen starts, the Bills win by 3. If Case Keenum starts, the Vikings win by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Vikings won by 3 with Josh Allen starting. And Riley and I kind of both told you we saw a world where it could happen, but, it didn't seem like the likeliest outcome. I mean, after watching that game, I think both these teams, if they played 10 times, they'd split 5 games apiece. Going into that game, I thought the Bills would probably win 7 of them. But I think both these teams are really, really good. And it's incredible for me as a Vikings fan to see the Vikings win a big game like this, because I don't think I've ever seen them beat a team that has been deemed a Super Bowl contender.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a magical game altogether, and I'm excited to see where both of these teams go actually moving forward. So this next game also went into overtime. Another NFC North opponent overcame another 2-score differential, and that'd be the Packers and the Cowboys. This game was in Green Bay. Cowboys were pretty heavy favorites going in. I mean, they're regarded as one of the best teams in the league. Green Bay hasn't really played all that well up till now. So I don't know. We just talked about his Tampa Bay back. Do you think that Green Bay is back, or do you think this was just kind of a fluke?
I think it was kind of a fluke. It's a home game. Mike McCarthy's back. I think the whole team really wanted to win this for Rodgers. Do you think Christian Watson will ever have a game that good this season? Half as that good this season again?
Not like that. I mean,
Like even half as good. Do you think he'll have like a multi-touchdown game again?
I don't know about multi-touchdown, but I could see him go over 100 yards again. I mean, that was true efficiency, right? I mean, 4 catches and 3 of them were for touchdowns. So I think that's pretty hard to beat. But it's nice to see that Watson's actually starting to work out now. Now, he still has a case of the dropsies, but
Yeah, he was targeted 8 times for 4 receptions.
Green Bay was relying heavily on him to be a deep threat going into the season. Looks like he's finally starting to develop into that a little bit. So good for him, and hopefully he continues to develop and help out the Packers receiving core.
Is it just me, or is Mike McCarthy holding back the Cowboys?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, we talked about him coming into the season as a potential head coach firing candidate. I think he was on the hot seat going into the season. He may have saved his job. Now, of course, the Cowboys could have a complete collapse and miss the playoffs still. Highly unlikely, but, there's a world where that happens and Mike McCarthy is out of the building. So, I don't know. I can't say for certain because I'm not in the building, but based on the way things have looked the past couple of years, it kind of appears that way. And I think they should maybe be still looking elsewhere, even if they do go to the playoffs.
All right, who has more total yards per team? Green Bay Packers or Seattle Seahawks? This is very close.
So I know currently the Seahawks have the most points. I think it's hard for me to say because even though the Packers don't have as good of a record, there could still be a lot of empty calories. I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
I think it's Seahawks. Kenneth Walker's a beast. And last time I checked, Geno Smith is top 5 in passing yards. So it's Seahawks.
Green Bay has 3,523. The Seahawks have 2 less with 3,521.
What?
Very close.
So it's probably a lot of empty calories for Green Bay, right?
Yeah.
There must be a lot of rushing yards in between Dillon and Jones.
I'm sure Christian Watson put a big role in that.
Yeah, I didn't check his stats. How many receiving yards did he get?
I think it was 107.
Oh, well.
Total interceptions per team, Seahawks and Jets. Who has more?
Seahawks and Jets. Jets are a good coverage team. I don't know if they have as many interceptions. I'm sure they have more passes defended, but Seahawks makes most sense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I know the Jets defense is really good, but this question seems too good to be true, so I'm going to go Seahawks.
Seahawks have 7, only 7, and the Jets have 11. Both of you 0 for 2 on the Seahawks pick. Overall better player, Sauce Gardner or Tariq Woolen?
It's got to be Sauce Gardner. I think Sauce Gardner is more of the shutdown type of guy. Tariq Woolen's more of the, make a play on the ball when it's thrown your way or, just catching it. I think if I was given a choice between the two, I'd take Gardner because, when you have that ability to pick off passes, sometimes it comes at a cost of, jumping routes and giving up big plays.
Has Tariq given up any of those big plays?
That I'm not sure of. I'm sure PFF has that stat somewhere.
I mean, if he's getting the interceptions and we don't have any record of him missing anything, I'm gonna take him. As much as I love Sauce Gardner, I'm taking Tariq.
I would personally take Sauce Gardner. I'm gonna make a bold take here. I think he's the best cornerback in the league. Might not be that bold to some, but I mean, we saw a lot with Trayvon Diggs. He was one of the worst cornerbacks in a few stats last year, but he dominated interception category. So I think it's more safe to take it in those other stats. Give me Sauce Gardner.
Let's get into the Broncos and Titans a little bit here quickly. So I'm going to give you a stat from the Denver Broncos here, and let's see if you can figure it out. So I got to guess that stat for you guys here. So this is the Denver Broncos, okay? 16, 11, and 21. What do you think those stats are?
I'm going to say total yards by each of their running backs.
16, 11, and 21. Those are their point totals in all three of their wins this year. So basically, they haven't scored more than 21 points in a win, but they've scored 16 and 11 and also won a game. So if the Broncos had scored at least 18 points in each of their games, they would only have one loss right now. So, I mean, their offense is just bad. So Russell Wilson coming in was supposed to be this big acquisition. Yeah, the Titans are okay. I mean, they almost knocked off the Chiefs. But to only be scoring, 10 points against the Titans and then not scoring hardly any points at all, they just I don't know what they can do differently.
Can't really draft anybody. I mean, they don't have any, and
They got a
what
first
would you
round
even
now.
what would you even do? Yeah.
So like the consensus thought is that they're going to go for a guard or a right tackle. Personally, I think they need another playmaker.
Yeah, they don't. Oh,
All their playmakers have, well, not all their playmakers, but a good chunk of their playmaking ability has been hurt by, loss of Tim Patrick, just multiple injuries all around.
Jerry Jeudy.
They don't have Noah Fant anymore either. Albert O is okay, but he basically played his way to the bench. So now
Greg Dulcich looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, coming into the year, he wasn't even a thought at all, at least in the eyes of the national media. So they got to do something different to try to get more playmakers for Wilson. I don't know if that'll fix anything long term, but at least give the guy a fighting chance. I mean, this is just disastrous.
Yeah, that's a good point because it's kind of seeming that Denver doesn't have the firepower that it needs to have to be successful. Like, let's be honest, Cortland Sutton, he's solid, but him and Kendall Hinton aren't gonna get it. And shout out to Kendall Hinton because I mean, he somehow finds a way to get himself out in the field, and it's with the Broncos. So
when you're in a division with the Kansas City Chiefs, you gotta have offensive firepower. You are not going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs by playing defense. I can tell you that. The Broncos have a really good defense, but it's, they're not going to win the games by only scoring 11. I mean, you might as well go back to Drew Lock if you're going to try to win games by only scoring 10 points. It's just not what they thought it was going to be.
definitely not. And the price they paid for him?
Right. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it was such a high price tag, and so far hasn't been very high reward at all.
What do you think?
It's like paying $40,000 for a sports car, but can't pay for the fuel.
Yeah.
Where could you put this on all-time worst trades?
Okay, this is only the first year, and we see their identity right now, and it's not very healthy. So maybe give it another year, fire Hackett, get a new guy in there, grab some weapons in the draft and free agency, and then let's see what happens. But
I think
this
this
year,
is probably a top 10 all-time worst trade in the NFL.
so far,
Yeah.
I'd say top 5.
I mean, I'll be the first to say, I would never spend 3 picks on an aging Russell Wilson, 3 first-round picks.
So this could be a fun conversation here. Who should the Broncos look to replace Hackett with?
Ken Dorsey.
Peyton Manning.
So here's my issue with Ken Dorsey. So Ken Dorsey has never been a head coach before. He's only been a coordinator. Nathaniel Hackett, he's been a coordinator, and he was pretty successful at that. So my biggest concern, if I'm part of the Broncos' new ownership, is if I'm hiring somebody, I look at the Nathaniel Hackett hiring. I mean, the last 3 guys really that they brought in didn't have a great track record or any at all as a head coach. So I'm kind of looking at, is there anybody that I can bring in who's had success as a head coach before? Because at least I know that they can do it. So that's where you go to like Sean Payton. So the problem is it's going to be a high asking price to get Sean Payton. And now that they have their first round pick, maybe that's what they spend their first round pick on, is they spend it on Sean Payton. I mean, that's probably the only thing that I can think of, because I think if you hire Ken Dorsey, he could be a great head coach, but he could also just be another Hackett. I think you're entering a great unknown if you bring him in.
I disagree. I think it's all about if you trust yourself. It's a new regime, you said. And there's been a couple bad hires, but it's all about how you feel about it. If you trust that guy, just because it didn't work out for Hackett and maybe a few before that, I think it's all about how you trust yourself, and it doesn't have anything to do with the last guy.
That's a wise statement to make. 100% agree. And Connor, I want to go to your Sean Payton comment. Does he even want to coach?
There's speculation that he does, but it would have to be the right situation.
See, that sounds like an Urban. I'm not comparing him to Urban Meyer. We all know that Sean Payton's way better coach than Urban Meyer, but Urban Meyer did step away from Ohio State to work on his mental health and whatnot. But this kind of seems like a Urban Meyer Ohio State scenario, and like, oh, okay, it would have to be the right scenario in order to coach the NFL, and that didn't work out too well. And yeah, that was the transition from college to the NFL, but maybe Sean Payton's year off put him in a mindset to, I'm not the best coach, but I'll give it one more shot.
I think basically the reason why Sean Payton walked away from the New Orleans Saints has more to do with where their franchise was headed.
Okay.
Like we've talked before about how after this year, I mean, let's be honest, this year has been a disaster too. They are headed straight into the tank. And next year they're going to be in contention for the first overall pick, one would think.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we all talked about how we don't really agree with their idea of rack up the credit card bill and pay it later. So I think that it was more about that than anything. And, you know, I don't know if he left with the intentions of doing TV. Like, I don't know if that's why he left coaching. But so far, him as an analyst, he's been kind of dry. So I don't know, maybe he realizes that being an analyst isn't for him. But to your point about maybe an Urban Meyer situation, so yeah, like you said, Urban Meyer was a college coach. So I think that's a big thing there to start off with. Also, Urban Meyer had off-field issues to begin with. when you look back at his time at Ohio State, he had basically been suspended for different things that he was involved with. And, you could kind of see there was going to be a character issue there. That one you can see coming. Sean Payton has had a long track record in the NFL, and, you can look back on his time with the Saints and just go, okay, yeah, it was time to move on. But I think that would be a good fit. Now, the other thing that I would say maybe is instead of Ken Dorsey, Leslie Frazier. Would that maybe be a good fit? Because at least Leslie Frazier has gotten to the playoffs before as a head coach. He'd fit in good with the identity of playing defense with the Broncos.
Let's
Only
talk
thing
about
is
this.
I think they'd have to change the scheme.
Did Leslie Frazier have a very successful head coaching career?
Well, he got to the playoffs at least once.
But like overall, would you want him as your head coach? Because it's easy to say, yeah, put this guy in this other person's program. But would you want him as your head coach?
I'd be fine with it, except for the fact that I don't really like defensive head coaches.
Okay.
I'd be fine with bringing Les in again anywhere. I wouldn't bring him back to the Vikings just because, it's all about the identity of your team, because that was one talking point this offseason is should the Vikings bring him back. But if I'm the Broncos and the strength of my team is the defense, I am probably going to lean into a guy like Leslie Frazier, and I'm going to hire, somebody, not Ken Dorsey, but a Ken Dorsey type to come in and, be my offensive coordinator, like a Kellen Moore type. And who knows? I mean, it's possible that the Buccaneers, if they don't end up making it to the playoffs, that, their entire staff could be fired and Byron Leftwich might be looking for a job. So they could bring him in as an offensive coordinator. Just the biggest issue is, regardless of who you're hiring as a head coach, if you're hiring an offensive head coach, then you need to hire basically somebody who's been a head coach before to oversee your defense, and vice versa. If you hire a defensive-minded coach, you got to find somebody to be the overseer, head coach of your offense practically. So either way, you're going to basically be hiring two head coaches. It's just which one do you want to be like the focus of your team and the main emphasis?
The vocalist.
I want to go back to you saying about Sean Payton as an analyst being dry. I don't really think he is. I think he brings good content other places because it's good to have insight from a head coach. And I see other content from him that's not on TV, but they use him through their platform, and I think it's good. And I do think if he came back, I think he should go to the Chargers, and I think he wants to go to the Chargers. I think he's made a couple statements that he likes the Chargers a little bit.
That'd be good to work with Herbert.
He'd be good anywhere he goes. He'd be a good fit anywhere. He'd be a good fit if he went to the Texans, even if he went to Minnesota.
I think he just needs to have a place, though, where they're kind of looking to win in the next couple of years, because let's face it, Sean Payton isn't a young man anymore. I believe he's 60 years old. So anytime you hire a head coach that's
young for a head coach.
Well,
Pete Carroll's 70.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I mean, he's probably not going to stick around for as long as Pete Carroll has. So he's probably going to try to win a Super Bowl, and once that window closes, then he'll probably retire for good. So let's just say he goes to the Chargers. If he ends up working out with Justin Herbert, I think there's a possibility that he could be there for 10 years just because he'll probably be there for the life of Justin Herbert. So, whatever team he goes to, he's basically going to only go there if he knows that there's a window now.
So, XFL Draft is happening tonight. What do you guys think about the reconstruction of the league?
I'm into
it.
Yeah. I not just the XFL. I'm into all these new leagues and even the old leagues like the CFL. I'm into the USFL. I watched a little bit of that last spring. It was actually pretty entertaining. You don't have to like get super into it. Just lay back.
Yeah, I mean, there's football on. I was a little bored with it, but there was football on, and I think that the XFL was in the right direction. If the pandemic didn't happen, I think it would have gone pretty far, and
Definitely.
I can't wait to see what happens.
I just it's weird because how the way they advertised it back in whenever they used to air it. I don't remember when it was. I don't even think I was born yet. Maybe I was born. It was like 2005, 2006. I don't remember when they aired it. Before they revived the league, but it kind of seems like they've softened up the rules a little bit.
Have they?
Like they kind of transformed it into a like regular football, other than like wrestling, the combination of wrestling and football. It's
You know what
regular
I
football.
like? I like what they did is you could go for a 2-point conversion, and you could go for a 3-point conversion. I thought that was so good. Like they just have stuff that the NFL didn't have, and it's not to say that the NFL should add a lot of that. I just think it's cool to have differences.
Well, okay, so is there? I could be wrong, but isn't there a partnership between the NFL and the XFL right now? I thought I saw them
I
sign
think
like
there
an
might
agreement
be.
between like networks and stuff like that.
There's some sort of partnership. I don't know entirely what the partnership entails, like what all goes into it, but there is something like that.
It's almost like because it's almost like every single football league runs to the NFL. Because I remember the AAF was strictly through the NFL, and the AAF was actually pretty fun to watch. Basically the same thing as the USFL.
I don't know how you guys feel, so I know we had talked about last Saturday, we had talked about how we thought that NFL Europe was a good idea. Instead of bringing in the XFL, bringing up all these alternative leagues, I actually much rather have NFL Europe come back. I think that'd be fun, and also it would fit into the NFL's idea of expanding internationally. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, but I think that would be the best alternative.
Here's my thought: alternative leagues and NFL Europe, because then you can have the fans from Europe enjoying football, just like we are. But the alternative leagues here, they need to start locating them in different cities, different populated cities.
Yeah, I think Texas is gonna have 3 teams in this XFL. I think they took away.
That's the problem though.
They took away New York.
There's already 2 teams in the NFL.
Yeah,
they need to populate them out. Like Salt Lake City, that was perfect.
Yeah, I don't really see the XFL as an alternative league compared to the USFL. I think it's here to stay, and I love every part of it. I was super entertained by it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's its own thing. Yeah, it's probably got some type of partnership with the NFL, but who doesn't at this point?
Yeah.
The whole sport runs through the NFL.
All right, well, that's probably it from us today. We're going to have more to talk about this week, so stick around and make sure you're looking out for all of that. And if you want to get notifications of when we post videos, you can like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And also check us out on all the streaming platforms, basically anywhere you can get your podcasts. So we'll see you next time.